Hello and welcome to a live Kerfefe Break on Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. I'm your host, Keri. This is the podcast where we talk about culture, politics, sometimes pop culture, spirituality. The live shows, Mondays and Fridays, if you're here, we talk about what's in the news, what's on our mind, and we sometimes have guests. And today, I'm very excited because my guest is my hero. He is my husband, Anthony Garcia. I don't think he did do one show with me when we were traveling in Europe, but other than that, I don't think he's been on a show since my birthday episode last year. So he's going to be joining us shortly to talk about music, history, sobriety, whatever you guys want to discuss. And we're just going to have a birthday celebration show. So if you're a regular here, welcome. It's good to see you. Happy Halloween. I've got on a friend gave me this hat and I had to see there. I had to fix the feathers because they will fall in front of your face. Let's see if we can get that. Okay. We'll have to, it's going to be an ongoing problem. I probably should have taped it. Anyway, thank you. It's good to see you. Welcome. A couple of things. This Friday, so at the end of this week on Friday, I'm going to have a very special episode. It's not going to be live. It's going to be at the regular time, though, at 1:00 Central. And this is a more serious one. And I hope everyone gets a chance to watch it coming up this Friday. It's going to be with some of the parents who've come together in a school district in Texas, the Grapevine Colleyville School District, who've come together as volunteers, basically. They're unpaid, to put together the first GCISD news, and which is basically a newspaper talking about what's happening on the school board, talking about what's happening in the schools. And it was a pleasure to get to speak with them. I'm still editing the video. I hope you check it out. And if you're interested in it beforehand, so that you have some background, I would say you should watch. There is a new mainstream news hit piece podcast about these parents, about this school district. It's called Grapevine. It's on NBC. And the hosts of this NBC podcast, they previously did this is their second podcast where they target a city in Texas because of the school board being overturned, because of school board elections and people being elected who they don't agree with. So parents who I guess could more accurately be described as more conservative than the previous board were elected. In my opinion, Grapevine Colleyville is one of the successes in terms of giving parents their rights back, giving parents a say in what's happening in the classroom, and most importantly, making education the number one priority for what is happening in a school. And so I previously, last year, you may remember, I got to interview some of the parents. They were different parents at the time. This was before the school board elections. You can go and look that interview up. It was, I think it was called GCISD Parents or School Board, or it might have been called CRT in schools, because at the time, that was a group of parents who were called GCISD Parents. They came together, they organized, they went door to door, they did leaflets on what was happening in the schools. A lot of them came to learn what was going on in the schools because of the COVID years and because of seeing what the kids were learning at home on the computer, during Zoom classes. And it was a real success. If you are I don't care where you are in the country, if you still have kids in the public school system, and you're dealing with these problems of woke indoctrination and a great focus on pseudoscience like gender identity, or if you're dealing with a school that's basically giving up their promise to make education the number one thing that's happening at that school, I would say you should take a look at what happened in Grapevine Colleyville, because those parents kicked some serious butt. They got organized. They elected new members of the school board. And because they did so, and because they were successful, and because they're turning things around, NBC News has put out a national podcast called Grapevine with the sole intent. I've listened to half of it now, And I can tell you, I might do some episodes just breaking it down because it's incredible. It's with the sole intent of smearing these parents who deigned to want to know what was happening in their kids' classroom, who deigned to want to have a say about what books their kids were reading and whether or not there was sexually explicit material in those books. And so NBC News has this podcast, and the entire thesis of the podcast is they try to hang it on Christian nationalism, those buzzwords we've heard a lot in the past few years. They try to paint this entire movement, grassroots movement of parents who were coming together and saying, we don't like what's happening here and we want to change it. They tried to paint it as some crazy extremist right-wing Christian nationalist movement, ignoring the fact, and two of the parents I talked to in the interview that's going to come out Friday, ignoring the fact that many of these parents are Black, are Indian descent. They are some of them are Muslim. They're not all Christians and they're not all white. That's for sure. But they try to, in the podcast, paint it that way. And they also they put a lot of emphasis on the fact that a cell phone company called Patriot Mobile, which some of you may be familiar with, got involved and put up some money, and it developed a PAC and put up some money to help people get elected. And their complaint seems to be only we're allowed to do that. Their complaint seems to be, wait a minute, the conservatives there are companies who are putting their money where their mouth is and spending money on candidates who embody the values that they think are important. They seem really upset by that. So the other quick thing I'll say about the podcast, and if you listen to it, it might blow your mind that they do this, because at first it kind of shook me a little. They make the central storyline of the podcast a smear campaign of a private citizen, of a mother who lost her son to gender ideology and dared to speak about it at a board meeting. They spend the entire series coming back to this woman, repeatedly interviewing her son, who now, says that he's a trans woman. They get involved basically in this woman's child custody dispute, and they do everything they can to paint her as some crazy wackadoodle religious fundamentalist, this woman who's already gone through the trauma of losing a child to this cult. So I think with the national news, I think what NBC News is doing is despicable, but I also think it's going to blow back on them, because they do a podcast like this for, who they do it for. It's for elite left coast radicals, people who are already in the woke cult, so they can point at Texas and say, "Oh, look at those crazy bigots down there. I can't believe they had a school board election and they elected new people." But in the end, I think what they're actually doing, that's who they're making the podcast for. But I think what they're going to do is find that there are parents in other cities and other school districts who get a chance to listen to the podcast and who actually agree with a lot of things the parents were concerned about. The parents who organized to overturn the board, but overturn the board just means electing new people. So I think it might end up being a very good thing that they're trying to smear Grapevine, and I hope that other parents in other places listen to it. If you want to dig in more, you can check out GCISD News, which those are the folks that I interviewed that's going to be on Friday, and they're trying to do. I think it's a great idea. They're trying to just stay non-biased as best they can, though they have their own opinions. They're trying to report on what's happening in the school board, what's happening in the schools, and see if they can turn around the downtrend that had been happening in that school district when it came to academic achievement. And what's funny about it, they've only put one issue out so far of this GCISD News, and it's just very just kind of non-controversial. Hey, this thing happened at the school, this is happening at the school, and the woke people are attacking it. They're on Twitter and stuff attacking a newspaper that's just documenting what's happening in a school district. It's kind of crazy. So anyway, Friday, please be here. That'll be 1 o'clock Central. It's not going to be live. Like I said, it's pre-recorded, but I hope everyone gets a chance to watch it. If you can't be here when we air it live, or what do they call it when you do it on YouTube? A premiere, when we premiere it. If you can't be here when we premiere it, listen to it later, especially if you have kids in public schools. And yeah, I'm very excited about that. So Anthony's not here yet. He's setting up his tech. My husband's been on the road this weekend. So our weeks are a little different than people who work a 9 to 5. Both of us usually work Saturdays, but he works all weekend a lot of the time. He'll Thursday, Friday, Saturday, sometimes Sunday. Those are his days. So he literally just walked in the door from a weekend of shows, and he's getting his tech set up, but he'll be here in a second. But it is his birthday, and I'll just highlight some of these super chats. Thank you so much, Robert Lowry, who's been a member for 8 months. He's also one of our mods. Robert says, "Happy birthday, Anthony. You're almost as old as me." Thank you so much, Robert. Robert's actually been out to a couple of our house concerts here, and we really enjoy getting to meet you in person several times now. Also from Goodnight Mister, who's been a member for 2 months, says, "Woohoo, coffee and steak while working. Hail all." Oh, wonderful. Coffee and steak. It's my favorite. Steak and eggs is like my favorite breakfast right now. Thank you so much. Okay. He says, "I'm here waiting on StreamYard." Okay. Well, he'll be joining us shortly. Let me pull up. So we figured we would just hang out today and talk about all kinds of things. But my husband's put out 2 albums this year. And while we're waiting for him, we can start off with just playing a little bit from one of these. So and he can tell you more about it, but when he gets here. But the Songs album is basically a lot of the songs that he does at the singer-songwriter festivals. But the one I'm about to play you, he does it, with acoustic. But this one is a lot more produced than that. This is a very old song that he wrote way before I knew him, and he's added it to this album, and I just think it's beautiful. So I'm going to play just a little bit of this until he gets here. This one's called "The Woman at the Well." Can you guys see that? Oh, not yet. There we go. There's no music video for this yet, so we'll just listen to a little bit.
So I'm talking with the woman at the well. She's a little bit crazy. Her lips move like everyone else. Her eyes are like a calm river. She's got wounds just like the leopard. She's drawing her water, but she won't let me help her. And I learned tonight that I'm not divine. Talking with the woman at the well. Tonight it's much too soon to talk about love. Tonight down the paths we're on. We stare down the paths we're on. There is no future right now. There is no future right now. There is no future right now.
Okay, I'm not going to play the whole thing. You guys can go check it out at Anthony Garcia Music. But I hope you enjoyed that one. And I had to escape backstage to help Anthony with his tech, but I think we figured it out. So without further ado, please welcome Anthony Garcia. Oh, I don't know if your mic's working.
I'm muted. No, I'm there.
There you are. Okay.
Hey.
Welcome and happy birthday.
Thank you.
We're doing this in two separate rooms because we find it's easier for the microphone. So here, I've got a couple of messages for you, and then I want to talk to you about, I guess we could start, we're talking about the new album.
Mm-hmm.
So you missed this while you're gone. Robert Lowry's here. He said, happy birthday, Anthony. You're almost as old as me. And let's see, Lindsay Garrett, thank you so much, says, the guitarist with me wants a full guitar list.
What does that mean?
I don't know. I thought that was a musician thing. Does that mean every kind of guitar you played? Maybe. And then the pirate is here, and he says, happy birthday, Anthony.
Oh, Keri. Tell that handsome devil husband of yours happy birthday. Keri. The most handsome. He's the most handsome of all the pirates I've seen.
Pirate, does it make you laugh to hear Americans try to do your accent? He says, I'm Irish now.
I've always been Irish. This whole time.
That's the best you're gonna get in this house of that kind of accent. I can't do any accents. At least Anthony can do something approximating.
I went through a phase of like, I liked Pirate Tomsky, and then I really liked him when he got us hooked on Deadwood, and now I'm kind of almost to the point of not liking him because he got us hooked on Deadwood.
That's true, because now Deadwood's over.
Well, yeah, but it's just sort of like it just ended.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I wanted to see the main guy die. That one dude. I wanted to see that one guy get shot.
Oh, the main bad guy.
Yeah.
Anyways. Yeah, towards the end. Okay, Deadwood's a great series, though. We are just a little sad. Davina says, you make pirates sound like a drunken leprechaun.
I am a drunken leprechaun. Keri.
Thank you, GJJ, who says, happy birthday. Thanks for being here. Okay, we're not just going to giggle and laugh the whole time. I was joking with my husband. I was like, how am I going to interview you? It's basically going to be me saying, like, who's the sweetest man in the world? That's so cheesy. Nobody wants to hear that. The way I would interview Tiger. So, tell everybody a little bit about the Songs album. Because we started off while we were getting your tech ready. I played about half of The Woman at the Well. So yeah, tell people a little bit about this one.
Okay, so I just put out this album, and this album is just songs that I kind of basically songs that I've written and that are acoustic and voice. And I tried to make an album that I could sell or share with people at these songwriter festivals that I play at. So something that's representative of what I do at songwriter festivals, which is basically like Nashville style songwriter in the round. Everybody plays a song and then goes the round and then plays another song. And I didn't have anything like that available at these festivals. So I decided to make an album of a collection of songs I've done with the exception of the last 2 songs on the album, which are full band or full. That last song you played is like a song that I orchestrated and arranged for voice, and I played piano, and then I had a friend of mine play. She played cello, and I just wrote all the strings on there are one cello, but it's like playing in the different registers of the cello, so it sounds like an orchestra because I couldn't afford an orchestra. So I just decided to, use the full range of the cello instead of getting a string quartet. So she just
It's pretty incredible because I asked you when I first heard that one about who's doing violin, and there's no one doing violin.
no, she
Yeah.
just did all the parts.
And so the I haven't had you on to talk about the other album you did this year.
Mhm.
So for people who are asking, what's the difference? You also put out an album, which I did play, as you know, a couple of clips from it during shows, but you weren't here to talk about it. Can you tell us a little bit about your Moonlight album, which came out first?
Yeah, that one is also was made for a reason. It's a solo guitar album of pieces that I've written, solo guitar, Spanish style guitar pieces, instrumental, with the exception of 2 songs that are sung in Spanish that I didn't write, that are traditional Spanish songs. And that was, of course, just based on people not of course, but people would come up to me often and ask if I had a Spanish guitar album, and I didn't. So I decided to make one. And it was before we went to Europe, and I did it for the purpose of playing those songs live at the festival and my shows in Europe that we played, and to have that new album available for people to buy when we're playing gigs over there. So
Mhm.
that's kind of was that. And so I started recording that in April, released it in August, and then started recording this one in August and release it in October. Yeah. So just two fast albums, but the quality I hope is well, it's to my standard, but it's I don't know, if hopefully people like it. And if they don't, that's
And
their problem.
and you had Steve master both of these?
That's right. My violinist, her husband mastered both albums. He's a very amazing master of mastering. So
Okay, I'm just gonna play a clip from the Moonlight album so people can hear the difference, and this one is for the layman like myself. Yeah, this one is more Spanish guitar. That's the way I describe it to people. I just love this album, and I know I'm biased because I'm married to you. But, it's funny because when you get in my truck sometimes in that album, you're like, "Oh, this is a great album to
this
play.
music is awesome.
This music's awesome," 'cause I listen to that one all the time. It's great, background, kind of very zen, relaxing. I don't know how to put it. I just love having it on in the background when cooking or driving or whatever. So, they're very different albums. The Songwriter album, like you said, is more of what you've been doing at these singer-songwriter festivals. And so, can you talk a little bit about the writing process and what that's like? I think you're the first person that helped me to realize I guess it sounds obvious now, but that helped me to realize that writing music is very different from writing lyrics, and how do those things come together for you?
So writing music is, well, first of all, I think in my case, in most cases, nothing actually is written on, nothing gets written down. So it's just a word that we use. It's a grown up word for making up a song. So a lot of times for me, it's like, just, it had just kind of, it just is there in your head and kind of just, you know, kind of, kind of spinning around and just kind of bothering at you, pecking at you. And then you kind of just figure it out on the instrument. And some of the pieces, like the guitar pieces, are just like sound check pieces. Like just maybe I'll just be noodling around before I start a gig, or just like the first song if I'm just kind of warming up and kind of messing around, and then it just sort of turns into something. So it's not really for me, it's not necessarily something that I sit down and say, today I'm going to write a song. It doesn't for me, it doesn't happen that way. Some people it does, and I don't understand how people operate like that, but I can't, I don't operate like that. It just kind of is, it's either there and continues to bother me. And if it's worth remembering, then I'm going to remember it. And sometimes I'll use sometimes if it's a really, really good idea and I don't want to forget it, I'll use my phone and record a note, an audio file. But other than that, it's not really a process for me, other than like maybe I'm doing the dishes or I'm outside shoveling a ditch for our water line, and this song will just keep going in my head and just keep growing. And I'm just I'll put the shovel down, and I'll go inside and figure it out on the piano or the guitar or whatever, or just remember it. I try my best to remember stuff. I try not to write things down, because the more I can remember it, the more I try to internalize it as much as possible, rather than writing it down and relying on that.
And so it stays with you in your head.
Exactly.
I imagine it's a little bit like, so for me, not being a musician, you know this, you're married to me. I wake up with a song in my head every morning.
Yeah.
It's like my head's like a radio, and there's always, like, when I wake up, there's just always a song. And sometimes it's a song that I heard the day before on the radio, or that I was playing. Sometimes it's a song I heard last week. I don't know how the songs get in there. But it's very nice. I love it. But it's never a creation of mine. It's always someone else's music. But so for you, it's sort of like, does it sound similar to that? You've got this tune that just is in your head.
Sometimes it'll just kind of just stick around, and it's like, sometimes you don't know if it's yours or not. There's a lot of creative people. I think famously, like maybe the most famous story is Paul McCartney, when he wrote the song Yesterday. He woke up with it. He dreamt that song, and he woke up and played it figured it out on the piano, and he was like, this is a really nice song. I wonder what it is. And then he went around playing it for all his friends, and they were like, I've never heard this song. And he's like, are you sure? And he'd go around to all these different people. And finally he decided, well, I guess I wrote that song, and that was just the way that he wrote that particular song. That also happened to Townes Van Zandt too. Exactly. Adam Worrell says scrambled eggs. Those were the original lyrics of the song, because he didn't have lyrics. It was like, scrambled eggs, oh my baby, how I love your legs. It's like just gibberish. Those are actually the first words of the song. And
really,
yeah. And Townes Van Zandt had the song If I Needed You. He wrote that. He wrote that too.
Oh, that's such a beautiful song.
He wrote that in his. Guy Clark would tease him when they would do songwriter circles. He'd be like, well, I wish I could write a song in my sleep. Or what? No, he said that was like, not bad for writing that song in your sleep. Or something. I don't know. Those guys are always funny with each other.
Because he woke up with it in his head.
Yeah, he just woke up with it in his head. It was there, and he was like, oh, we wrote a song when I was asleep.
Thank you so much to Real Raven for the 10. What is that?
British lira. That's what you call it. It's not I didn't make that up.
No, the British lira one. That joke came because it looks like a little L.
Oh. I didn't see what it
was. Real Raven. I think, is this euros?
Yes.
Thank you for the 10 euros. This is one of our German compatriots.
Oh, that's right.
It says, just a drive-by comment, as we have a nice and very rare TV evening tonight. Give my best to Anthony, Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. I hope he stays awesome. Thank you so much. That's so kind of you. I love all the birthday the birthday wishes. He says those are 10 eucalyptus dollars. Okay, that's good. That's what I'm
good.
going to call them from now on. Thank you. He's German, but based in Ireland.
Oh, cool.
So,
Cool.
so we're going to hang out and talk about a number of different things. I mean, you have so much knowledge about music history. You teach me so much, and I was trying to think about like what specific questions could I ask you that would be interesting to the audience. Also, one of them is the first year we were dating. So for New Year's Eve, we had this I wanted to have rituals. Like I've come to believe that rituals are important at marking time and marking you know, helping you to remember, helping to create memories of certain things, right? Like we have a birthday party to not just to celebrate another year of a person's life, but to try and mark that and make it a memory of the passage of that year. And so at New Year's, we went for, that was after we had just gotten sober, and we went for a New Year's Day hike. And it was a sunrise hike, and I had never done that before. Because usually I was one of those people who's really hungover on New Year's Day, and so were you. But
Yeah.
you had done the New Year's Day hikes before in Korea, and you'd talked to me about that. So we did that, and we also had a list of things that we did and that we wanted to do that day, because I've always heard that you should, on New Year's Day, you should spend time doing the things that you want to do the rest of the year. And don't do anything on New Year's Day that you don't want to do the rest of the year, right? And so one of the things we did on New Year's Day was we taught one another something. And so tell me about do you remember the musician that you taught me about? I'm springing this on you.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, do you remember the card trick I taught you?
I did teach
Nope,
you a card trick.
Yeah, the Jaco Pastorius.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So do you want to talk about him a little bit?
Sure.
Because I had never heard of him, actually.
Yeah. Jaco Pastorius is probably most famously known for inventing the fretless bass. At least I think he invented, pretty sure that's what he's credited with, and I'm just going to stick with that. But he was a fusion bass player. He played in a band called Weather Report. He was the closest thing to a rock star bass player that anyone, I think, probably has ever gotten in the history of music. And I'm talking about in the funk world, and I'm talking about rock star. And I'm not talking about like Mingus and all these guys before him, but he was basically the Jimi Hendrix of the bass, and he was not exactly Weather Report. The Swill says that on there, and he was not only, he was like Charles Mingus in the sense that he was an excellent bass player, and Jaco was very flashy and innovative like Jimi Hendrix was, but he was also a composer, and he orchestrated his compositions for big band, and he was a big band composer essentially. So, but he was also an extremely eccentric person. He's also very self-destructive, and he had, I guess, what was diagnosed as bipolar. I know y'all have covered bipolar, and I don't want to say that's what he was, but he had a very serious psychological problem that's similar to bipolar, and he had a very bad chemical imbalance that caused mood swings and personality swings. Which developed as he got older, later on in his life. He was a prodigy, a genius. He could just do things on the bass that just people. One of the most, on his debut album, I'll just say this: one of the most memorable tracks, one of the most fascinating tracks on there is he took a piece by Charlie Parker. And Charlie Parker was the virtuoso saxophonist from the 40s who invented the style of bebop. So it's essentially, it's like he was kind of like the J.S. Bach of jazz. It was very intricate, contrapuntal, very virtuosic music to play on the saxophone. Charlie Parker is his own. That's another whole other subject. I don't want to get on him yet. But Jaco, 40 years later, took this song by Charlie Parker called Donna Lee, and he played it, the solo on the bass, which is extremely difficult. But he did it with accompaniment of only congas, and it's just this. It's so cool because Jaco's from Miami, so he brings this like Cuban flavor to it, and it's almost just like an afterthought. Like he was just hanging out with his buddy. Hey, can you just play this beat? And he played not only the melody line but the bass line, and soloed over it. And that's just something that was not heard of at the time with bass players. I mean, you didn't see bass players doing that, especially on the electric bass, and especially on a fretless electric bass. So that's how Jaco was how innovative and just how much of it that really drew a lot of attention to him. And the rest of the album is just one thing I love about Jaco, which I draw a lot of inspiration from, is each song is different. It's like every song is like each track is just like it's a different person, and it just richness of some of the songs are just these beautiful orchestral works, and some of them are just like straight up funk. He has Sam and Dave on there. They do a track. Oh my God, they had a real famous track, and I can't remember what it was, but they were like this funk duo. And he just had all these different tracks on there. And then he achieved fame when he started playing with this group called Weather Report. And Weather Report was a very big fusion group in the 70s, and they needed a new bass player, and they were auditioning for bassists. And Jaco kept sending them letters and kept trying to get an audition. And finally, and they wouldn't respond to him just because they needed somebody with a name. They wanted somebody who had a name. Well, he took the initiative, and I think he actually went up to the leader of Weather Report and was basically like, "You need to hire me. I'm the greatest bass player in the world." and, and he's like, "Here's my debut album, the one I just described." He handed him his debut album, and so they hired him, and then he's like Freddie Mercury and Queen. He became Weather Report. It's like it was like nobody else mattered. It was like, and he propelled that group to superstardom. I mean, they were touring a jazz funk group in the 70s. They were touring, a fusion group. They were touring the world, and he was just like, he was like Van Halen. He was like Michael Jackson. He was huge. And like I said, he started exhibiting these eccentric behaviors, and then he went solo on his own, and he started doing, just his biography is fascinating for the stories alone of his behavior. There were stories when he was touring in Japan that they couldn't find him for hours. And then he just appeared. He rode his motorcycle into the hotel lobby, and he crashed and passed out in the lobby. No. And he was soaking wet, and they opened his jacket, and there was a squid in there. There was a time when he was in Germany, and he just got off. They were in the snow in the middle of Germany on tour, and he got off the tour bus and just started running, and they couldn't find him for 3 days or something like that. Just he started exhibiting this behavior.
Yeah.
And sadly enough, when he was in New York City towards the end of his life, he started abusing coke real bad, and alcohol. And that was also compounded by the fact that his wife, they had divorced, and she took custody of the children. And it was just a perfect storm of just awful stuff that was happening to him. He ended up being homeless in New York City.
Wow.
And he was living in Washington Square Park underneath the arch, and he would get his ghetto blaster, and he would play Weather Report and be like, "Hey guys, this is me. This is me playing." And he'd have a hat out. It's so sad. It's just a tragic story. So then he went back to Fort Lauderdale, which is where his hometown is. And he was back there, I think, visiting his mom or trying to visit his wife or trying to visit his kids, something just really sad. And he was at a bar one night, and he was, of course, freaking out and just mouthing off. And he mouthed off to the wrong guy, and he mouthed off to the bouncer. And the bouncer was a 2nd-degree black belt. And you can see in this picture, Jaco's he's not a fit guy. He's a skinny guy, and the bouncer beat him and put him in a coma, and he died. And he was 35 when he died.
So young.
Anyways, that's his story, and that's who I told you about on New Year's. And that's the briefest summary I can give of just his fascinating.
Yeah.
But I think he gave the best summary of who he is when I think one day somebody quoted him and said that they saw him playing. He would just set up his amp at Washington Square Park on the basketball courts near the Blue Note there in the West Village, and he would just play his bass at the basketball courts. And he would tell people, he'd be like, "Me and Jimi Hendrix built the Twin Towers." I thought that was the best summary that Jaco could give of who he is and what he was aspiring to be,
Yeah. I just, like you said, he was so young, and there are people in the comments saying, "Yeah, what a tragic life." And why do you think it seems that a lot of people in the creative space, and maybe it's not just maybe it's the creative space, or maybe it's the creative space who becomes successful. I'm not sure, but a lot of them tend towards, like we just saw Matthew Perry passed away this week, who's not a musician, but an actor in the creative space, who had this life of just hard living and drug and alcohol addiction. And
Mhm.
do you have a sense that it's a higher percentage of people in the creative area who fall into that trap, or is it just it's across every demographic?
Well, maybe it's just, I think it's across, I mean, everybody suffers from that at some point, and but I think it's just mainly, it's probably more magnified in the art world and in the music world, because those we look to athletes and artists and musicians as as lay people. We look to them as our heroes, and we just watch their life under a magnifying glass, so everything they do is magnified. But I think what happens is that society, and society tells us, and we tell ourselves, that I have this gift and I have this special talent. Why am I not famous? I should be famous. You'll have people tell you, you should be famous. You should be doing something with you should monetize your talent. And so then is born the little kernel, this little seed of the voice that tells you you should, and that sits on your shoulder and tells you should be doing this. You should be doing more. Why aren't you this? Why aren't you that? And which, and as a result, makes one feel like a failure.
Mhm.
And you have to cope with that in some way. And some people so there's a lot of forced creativity. There's a lot of putting yourself out there for exposure, and then putting pressure on yourself to perform, and then living up to that standard, and then being either pleasantly surprised and propelled to commercial success, or being disappointed and then taking it out on yourself or dealing with that in some way. And that unfortunately happens at a very young age with people. And I think it's not having that balance of life. What is important? Well, when your career goals are the most important thing, more important than anything in your life, the rest of your life is going to be out of balance. And it's when you can hopefully figure out and maybe that you need to reevaluate your life and reprioritize what's important, that may come fourth or fifth, or may not even be that important. So I think I think we and society put those pressures on ourselves as artists. And I actually had this conversation with someone this weekend, because as the honest truth to me is, like, some people will say to me, like, you should go on The Voice, or you should do this, or you should do that with your career. And when people would say that to me in the past, I would really take that to heart, and it would really kind of depress me and upset me. But lately, I've just told people that's I appreciate you saying that, but that's not really what my priority is right now in my life. It used to be, it's not anymore. And my priority now is, my marriage, my sobriety, and focusing on my spirituality. And those are the things that are important to me. And making good music and being in a place where I can create and leave music to share with people. That's what's important to me. It's not important to me to be a millionaire and to be famous and all that. I mean, if I had more money, that'd be great. But they're not important to me. So I think it takes time to figure that out as a human being. And some people get
And
lost in that.
you
And then
went through that.
you have somebody like Matthew Perry, like you're talking about, that then once you do achieve commercial success, like he did, then you have I'm sure there's a whole other battle of relevance, and trying to maintain relevance, and questioning yourself, questioning if you are relative anymore, or if you're a has-been, and having to deal with that shame, or accepting it grace. There's the fork in the road, that you can be shamed by that, or you can accept age gracefully into your or reinvent yourself, have the strength to reinvent yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I just wanted to highlight Dion, the queen of quotes, is here, and she says, "Should is a harsh master."
Yep,
Yeah.
it is.
And you
It is.
kind of alluded to that, but you went through that in your life, that period of maybe putting that success or fame or what have you higher than it should be on the
Mhm.
priority list.
Mhm.
Do you wanna talk about that and
Mhm.
leaving that, or
Yeah, so coming from West Texas, from Lubbock, where I grew up, I had to get out as soon as I could, because I was a kid and I had to see the world and blah, blah, blah. So I did that, moved to New York City to achieve success and wealth and fame, and kind of learned a big lesson there. And that was a big turning point for me, because I it was my priority. Number one, my creativity was terrible there. I created the worst music I've ever created in my life while I was living there, because I felt such pressure to create a hit or to create something fun or to get or to have a big following at the bars I was playing at, or this and that. I mean, just everything that has nothing to do with music, everything that has nothing to do with good art. And while I was there, I learned I stumbled into this music therapy position that about, that where I was working with Alzheimer's patients, and I was like, well, I'll just do this little job while I play at night and go to the clubs and blah 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 and all that stuff. And I ended up I was doing music in a day program um, out on Long Island, and that's the job that just taught me so much about who I am as a person and what's important in life, because I was immediately confronted with people who were ultimately in the last days of their life, essentially. And um, some of them I got very close to all of them. Some of them passed away while I was working there, and it just I was 26, so it was a pretty eye-opening experience for me to one of the first times that I really experienced something like that in a professional setting, and having to do in that context, in the context of leaving home and moving to the big city to pursue a dream, and then being confronted with that in my life. I know that was for a reason, and that gave me a lot of perspective. So I kind of realized what was important and what wasn't, and realized that all the people around me in New York were very self-centered and just kind of self-serving, and they were the most important thing in their universe. And it just really seemed like the last thing on anybody's mind was actually making good art and good music, and the quality of life sucked up there. So I had to get out. And it was when I moved back to Texas that I was like, I can breathe. And I actually started writing songs that I thought were good, and that was, my return was probably about 15 years ago or something like that. Maybe more. But anyways, yeah, I just that was that journey.
But that's something, the struggle with the ego, I would say, that should voice, right?
Mhm.
Of that judgmental, um, you should be this, you should be doing that. I think that's something that people, it's like going to the gym. I've talked about on my show before, any kind of spiritual growth
Yeah.
or growth as a human, where you kind of can learn that lesson. I've
Mhm.
learned lessons before, and I can mark a moment in time like that, like you just did with, that's when I first learned that
Mhm.
lesson. And then later on, oh, and then that's when I learned that lesson again, or I learned a different part of that lesson, or I had
Mhm.
to address it again. It's sort of this thing you have to, um, that might crop up again later in life, where it's like, okay, how do I deal with this again? And sometimes you don't even realize it's the same thing, right? That you're,
Mhm.
oh, it's that same thing that's cropping up for me again.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, can can you talk about sobriety and how that relates to, I don't know, your changing priorities in life?
Mhm.
And I don't know how in depth you want to go. You've done a whole interview about your sobriety and music, but not on my channel, but you've done one before, and I thought you I thought you touched on some just really beautiful things in that interview. So as much as you want to talk about, it's coming up on, I just had my anniversary of 4 years of sobriety, and it's coming up on your 4 years in a few days. So
Mhm. Yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations to you, my lady. Um, yeah, it's funny. I was just talking with my buddy, my friend that lives in Denver. We were talking on the way home, when I was driving on the way home, about mindfulness, and just kind of, as you get older, like you were talking about, when you get to a certain age, it's not necessarily about getting a six pack anymore. It's about preserving, and it's like looking down the road and being like, I want to be able to still be able to lift a heavy box and touch my toes when I'm 70. So I'm going to take care of myself now and do the proper thing. But mainly, being aware of breathing. And he's really into, I forget what it is, some Chinese weird, like, where you do this thing and you
Wait,
breathe,
Tai Chi?
something like that. I don't know what it is. Chong Kong something. I don't know. He started explaining it to me, and I was like, that sounds stupid, but I do yoga every day. So, anyways, we were talking about, I've been doing yoga, as you know, try to do it every day. And, he was talking about what he does every day. And it was essentially, we were sharing with each other the same thing. It's just being mindful of your breath. And when you are focusing on your breath, your awareness changes, and that translates into other parts of your life, which brings me to your question. Um, it also makes you, with sobriety and everything like that, it does when you remove something that is just you're intentionally harming yourself with, and you're just destroying yourself with, it's like the veil has been the what is it, it's almost like a film has been lifted, and you're like, oh, first of all, I was wasting all my time doing this thing. I was destroying myself, and I was. You start to see the world in a different way, as you know, and yeah, it's just there's more hours in the day now, and there's more things I want to do. Even though I actually have more time than I've ever had now to do things. I feel like I don't have any time to do anything because there's so many things I want to do. Whereas before, all I wanted to do was get drunk and eat junk food and sleep and play music and then drink more. And but I'm very happy. I think it's the best. I think it's the best thing, best decision I've ever made to stop drinking.
I had some people, because I mentioned on my last episode at the beginning, just that day was, I think it was Friday, was my 4-year anniversary of sobriety. And then I had someone in the comments say, thank you, because I'm struggling, and it's inspiring to hear this.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to anyone? And I often hear from people, from strangers who will write me on different platforms or what have you, asking about personal demons they're battling. What advice would you have for anyone who is struggling to quit a toxic habit or something that they think they want to quit, but a part of them doesn't want to quit? That's the thing about addiction, I think, or even if you don't want to use the word, if a person doesn't want to use the word addiction, but that's the problem with a crutch or a behavior that I think you have to get to a place of, it's hard because you're struggling against yourself. Part of you doesn't want to give it up. Part of you's not ready, but part of you wants to give it up. So what advice would you have for someone in that situation?
Well, that's a tough question, but I would say, of course, like you've said recently, and like we both look to that Jordan Peterson quote of where he says, "Give up something if there's something that's causing you harm, give it up for a year, and then if after that year your life is better, then try it for 5 years, and if after 5 years it's better, then try it for 10." And I think that's a great place. I mean, you're going to have to start at some point. So start now if you really want to, and some people are going to, you have to also determine what kind of a quitter you are. And you have to, like, for myself, for example, I just quit, as you know, I just quit cold turkey. I just was like, I'm not drinking anymore. And I was done. Some people need a support group. Some people need some kind of a routine, a weekly group to go to talk about their problems. And that's fine too. Everybody's different, but if you want to do something, you should just jump off the platform and do it. Jump off the high dive and do it. That's my opinion about that. The other phrase in my brain that once you've embarked on a journey like that, I think it's important it's like, how do you maintain that? And it's a daily thing, but with each day it becomes a more tangible goal. I think it becomes something that becomes more realistic, and then it slowly becomes who you are. It becomes your identity, because you're not just giving up a substance or not even a substance. It can be any habit. It doesn't have to be a substance. It could be anything. It could be a habit that you don't like about yourself, or you don't like that you're doing. It just becomes the honesty you have with yourself. It becomes being responsible to yourself, and how honest are you being with yourself about this particular habit, and how is that you keeping that habit standing in the way of your personal growth, of your truth to yourself, or your relationship with God, or how is that keeping you from growing? Because it is.
Yeah.
If it's something you feel bad about yourself, it's keeping you from growing. It's keeping you from stepping to becoming that person the person you want to be, And I always think of that quote. There's this quote from that movie, Friday Night Lights, where it's about the
Football.
the football. I watched it years ago, and I remember they're at the state championship. The football teams at the state championship, and the head coach just gives this speech that's just this powerful speech, and then he looks over. Billy Bob Thornton is the assistant coach, and he looks over to Billy Bob Thornton. He's like, "You have anything to say?" And Billy Bob Thornton just walks up and he just looks at the team and just like, "Be perfect, be perfect." That's all he says, and it's like, to me, that is just such a powerful. That's such a powerful scene, because I kind of say that to myself over. I know we can't achieve perfection. We're all going to make mistakes. We're human. But I guess I think about it when I'm practicing music, or when it's like, I'm never going to be a perfect pianist. I'm never going to be the greatest pianist in the world. I'm never going to be the perfect person in the world, but I can achieve my own personal perfection. And I know what my standard of perfection is. I know, for example, how to practice the piano and how not to. You can't rush through a piece at full speed the first time. You have to break it down, practice with a metronome, practice hands alone. You have to do the things that you don't want to do. You have to be perfect at the beginning so that later you can draw upon the foundation that you've built, and have and that strong foundation that you can rely on it in times of when the adrenaline's pumping and you're in front of people and you're performing. You can have that recall. It's the same thing in our life. You have to you have to be perfect in the steps you take to achieving your goal, and you have to be perfect in your practice. You have to be perfect in your daily decisions.
So I agree with what Texas Sheep Lady's saying in the chat. First of all, you'll be better if you're aiming for perfection. Right. Yes. And what I hear you saying is about discipline, but it also occurs to me, I've thought about this before. We've talked about this before. I think you and I are really different in some ways.
Really?
Because because I'm one of those people.
I really haven't noticed, honestly.
I'm one of those people who the be perfect thing is the kind of motivation that sends me running in the opposite direction. You know what I mean? It's the pressure of like, I can't be. And I have that fear of perfection, and wanting to be perfect has stopped me from doing so many things, because I have the personality type who oftentimes I won't write unless I think it's perfect. And I'll write something, but I won't put it out unless I think it's perfect. That standard keeps me back. So I'll just say, if there are people listening who are like that, I'm also the type who, as you know, I needed to go. It really helped me to go when we both quit drinking, to go to sit in AA meetings and talk to other people and process it differently. And I think it's important what you said. There's so many different ways things to grab onto, to, what works for you, take it. If it doesn't work for you, leave it, because no one person's path out of some kind of toxic habit is going to be the same. So,
I want to also clarify. I'm not talking about creativity. I'm not talking about,
right.
That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is a lot of times when we try to change our habits, we as human beings love to make excuses. We love to give ourselves a reason to break our own rules. We love it. That's And in those moments when you're presented with that fork in the road, when you're standing at that fork in the road, it's like, I'm going to go down this path of sobriety, or let's say, for example, I'm going to go down this path of sobriety or not eating sugar or whatever it is. But it is my birthday, but it's Joe Bob's birthday tomorrow. But I've been doing really great this week, so I'm just gonna. It's in those moments that
you and I both done that.
You got to be perfect. Oh yeah, bazillion times. Which is why I have to. That's what I tell myself. I'm not saying everybody has to tell themselves to be perfect.
Right.
Of course, I'm not. I never would mean for anybody to be perfect. I'm just saying that when those moments arise for me, when those moments arise for me, I just laugh, because it's the most powerful line. It's just like, that's the best thing he could have said to that team when they're going to a state championship. It's like, be perfect. Because that's the only way you're going to win.
Yeah.
That's the only way you're going to win. It was just great. I was like, it was brilliant. That was a brilliant line in that movie.
I heard this. So you missed church yesterday because you were on the road. You had shows.
Because I'm a heathen.
I heard a great sermon. We haven't even had a chance to talk about it yet, because you just walked in the door before we started. So it's so interesting, because it applies to what we're talking about now. So I'll tell you about it. I'll tell the audience about it. He was talking about people who are struggling and taking off the old self, putting on the new self. And Christians in particular, specifically Christians who are stuck in some kind of sin, not a mistake, but not that kind of a sin, but a sin that they're stuck in that is where they're living right now, that they want to get out of. So like an addiction or something, or habit or something. He was saying that basically the willpower is not enough. He was saying, you hear so often, sometimes in our modern culture, the advice that's given to people when they want to quit something is, well, you should just quit it. Well, you should just have a stronger willpower, and which makes a lot of times some people feel like more of a failure because they haven't been able to do it and they can't quit it. And then they double down into the addiction because they feel like a failure because their willpower is not strong enough. And so the whole premise of his sermon yesterday was that the willpower is the servant of desire. And what you have to do is you have to change your desire. You have to change your affections. And he was saying, it's not until you have a greater affection that you're serving with your will that you'll be able to do it. So it's both. He's like, discipline's important, but you actually have to actively change what you love, what your desires are, what your affections are. And I thought that was such an interesting way of thinking about it. And I think that would probably be, that kind of message would be so helpful to the people who are in that place of, I want to quit, but I don't want to quit. Like I want to quit, but I need this and love this. And so he gave an example. He's like, for example, he said, you might be sitting in the audience today and thinking about, well, that's not true about willpower because I do things I don't want to do all the time, like get up early and come to church. If you don't feel like coming to church one morning, you're tired and it's cold and it's a long drive and what have you. And you use your willpower to come to church. And he said basically that he would argue, but you're coming to church because your desire for what you're getting out of church is greater than for your desire to stay in home in the warm bed. And it's still your willpower is serving that, the greatest desire. And so what do you think about that? I mean, that's my best way of explaining what the sermon was about yesterday. Oh, and if you're listening and you don't know, our church has sermons available on YouTube. It's called The Church on the Square. Our pastor is Bradley J. Helgerson, and he always does these really thoughtful sermons that give me a lot to think about. They usually go up, it's not the day after. I think it's like a week or something after. So this one is not up yet, but it will be.
Yeah, I think it's true. I think it took me a long time to learn that lesson. It took me a long time to, I guess, look at, quote unquote, like sin or maybe a bad habit. I think in my younger years, I would look at something like that as something I shouldn't do, or something I'm not supposed to do. So if I'm a good Christian, or if I'm a good this or that, then I need to not do X, Y, and Z. And it was for reasons of checking off a list and trying to fit into something that I thought I was supposed to fit into, that I would have eliminate certain behaviors. And now that I'm older and I've kind of experienced certain things, it's like, does it serve? I guess I look at it as like, does it serve me? Does it serve what I'm trying to do? What am I trying to do? What is my goal?
Yeah.
My main motivation in my life is just I want to try to be the best person I can be the best version of myself. And, and that's my motivation. And so that motivation is what allows me to, I guess, employ discipline to achieve that goal. And, whatever that is, whatever
your desires have changed. Like that priority list you gave changed.
And it's, I guess it gets back to, who do I want to be? Is this going to allow me to be the best person, the best version of myself? Drinking was not doing that. Sitting around drinking and getting wasted and blacking out and just being irresponsible and self-destructive. That was not the best version of myself. So, yeah, I do agree with that. I think that, the bigger goal or the bigger picture definitely fuels the discipline. And discipline's a tool to achieve your goal,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, so.
I think a lot of people who are struggling with this issue, any kind of addiction or what have you, sometimes, as we all know, that there's buried underneath this self-hatred.
Mhm.
So when you talk about your affections or whatever, and you think, oh, well, if you love yourself, you'll give this up. You should have the willpower to give this up because you love yourself. And the reality is, a lot of times when a person's in that place, they don't love themselves.
Mhm.
And so one of the practical tips or a bit of advice he gave during the sermon yesterday, if you're a Christian, this applies, um, would be to worship more.
Mhm.
He's like, if you have a failure of will, it's probably because you have a failure of worship. And I was thinking about that. I'm like, that's such a good way for me anyway to think about it um because if you're ever feeling in that, place of self-hatred or whatever, you can't really call upon your love of yourself to give you the willpower to do something. But if you've got something bigger than you that you love and you can focus on through music or prayer or reading the Bible or what have you, I think it shapes those affections and can pull you. I started thinking back, I've had that experience before where I've been in a very dark place. And one of my miracle moments that I told you about, where I was in the darkest place and I just put on I was listening to Kanye West's album, his Christian album. I love that album, you know.
Oh, I kind of gathered that since you put it on a repeat for like a year.
And I had not listened to it in a while at that point, and this song came on. I think it was That's What God Is, that song. And it felt like just the spirit of God came over me, of this joy and this weeping and laughing and this just peace,
Yeah.
like my burdens being lifted. It's hard to explain. And so when he was giving this sermon yesterday, I was thinking, it's so funny because it was that worship song that triggered that for me.
Mhm.
And he was sort of saying, you can't, if you're a truth seeker, if you're seeking truth or seeking God or whatever, it's hard. You can't force those moments, those transcendent moments to happen. But you can aim for them and try for, the revealing of God, those moments of God being revealed to you,
Mhm.
by focusing, by worshiping, by praying. And I don't know. It gave me a lot to think about. And so if anybody is listening, I don't know if that advice would help someone who's not a believer. So like, oh great, now I guess if I want to quit my addiction, I have to focus on God. But you know what? Maybe that's why AA is so successful. And there's all kinds of people in AA, believers and non-believers. But one of the central tenets of AA is you have to have a higher power. You have to have something bigger than yourself.
Mhm.
And I think that's because of that issue where people who are trapped in addiction, a lot of times they don't love themselves so much.
Mhm.
So they have to have something bigger than them that they
Mhm.
have affection for.
Mhm.
But yeah. Oh, I just wanted to say Epic Mike is here. Hello, Epic Mike. He says, look at this lovely couple. Good to see you, sir. Epic Mike of Epic Verse. I always love when you show up. Okay, I've got a couple of questions from you. So Adam Worrell says, so Anthony's from Buddy Holly's town?
Yes, I am from Buddy Holly's town, from Lubbock, Texas. That's where Buddy's from.
Real Raven? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that. Yeah, Lubbock, Texas. It's great. Buddy Holly's hometown. I went to the same high school. I went to Lubbock High School where Buddy Holly attended, and I actually had his homeroom when I was in high school, which was really cool. And yeah, Buddy Holly was. I mean, I loved him before I even knew he was from Lubbock when I was excuse me, when I was a kid. So yeah, that's where I'm from.
And you've got a show coming up there soon.
Yeah, I'm going back home next week. I'm doing like a kind of like a house concert kind of situation. It's a local, if anybody is listening from Lubbock or the area,
Yeah.
there is a group of friends of mine who have been very passionate about this project for many years. It's called the Lubbock Listening Room, and they get excuse me, they get sponsors, and they put concerts together that are just no talking kind of ticketed events there in Lubbock, and they get sponsors from wineries and different artists and different things like that. so the events are, have, things for people to eat and drink, and they pay a fee to come listen to the musician in a setting that is not a bar or something like that. So that's what I'm doing. Although I've worked it out with them to where it's a free show. They usually charge I think to make up they charge some money to make up for on their business end. And then they normally pay the artist a very generous guarantee. And I said, well, rather than paying me, just make it free, because I want family and friends to come. That I don't want them to have to pay to come see me play, because I just want people to come hear me play, and then I'll just probably rob one of them after in the parking lot.
One of your parents? I mean, one of your family?
Yeah,
Sorry.
somebody. Yeah,
one of your friends and family.
Yeah.
Preferably
an elderly woman.
Lupe, are you listening?
That believes in gun control. Not my mom. Come on.
So that was the joke.
I gotta rob my mom. I do that when I'm staying there and she's asleep. That's easy.
So that's November 9th at the Lubbock Listening Room, and people can find out more info at anthonygarciamusic.com.
The location changes for everyone, so you have to check the location, but it's
right.
Anyways,
okay.
There's probably nobody from Lubbock in this chat.
That's not true. You never know. I actually, Anthony Joyner, thank you so much for the super sticker. 3 Texas lira. I'm kidding. 3 pounds. Thank you so much.
I think it's 3 Lubbock rupees.
And then we got a couple others here. Michael Collier says, you got me hooked on Winning Time, and now they canceled it. I didn't know they canceled it.
Oh no.
I know there's a new season out. We haven't seen it yet. I didn't know it got canceled after that. That's sad.
The German guy, or the Raven, asked me what kind of microphones I use.
Real Raven says, what's your favorite vocal mic, and what do you use for recording guitars?
It's this one. Oh, well, I use this one for recording.
What is it?
It's just an AKG. It's called the AKG C214. I don't know. That's what it is. And they're inexpensive. And I also have another guitar mic, a different mic that I use for guitars that I'm happy to. It's right there. I can just pull it out and tell them if you want. But you want me to do that real quick? It's right there.
You can grab it. Also, Texas Sheep Lady says, Keri keeps going silent. Is it my lagging internet? If anyone else is having that problem, please let us know in the chat. I've been having problems with this microphone, so it might not be just you. Oh, and I appreciate you guys letting me know.
It's a Samson CO2. Samson, as in SAMSON. And it's a CO2, like carbon dioxide. And these are actually really great performing, fantastic microphones. I'm not a gearhead at all. I just plug it in and play. I just plug it in and use it. But I've just encountered these microphones in the wild on live gigs, and I got them. And they're real inexpensive mics. They're like $50 a piece or something like that. But they're incredibly good quality. And so that's what I use on these albums that I just made. These are the mics I've used.
Therese says it's an assault mic. Thank you, Therese. Andrew Joyner. Who's Anthony? Anthony is my husband.
Andrew Joyner.
Anthony's my husband. You can find his music at anthonygarciamusic.com, and here on YouTube.
I'm watching you, Andrew.
He's got some music videos.
That's some BS right there. You know who I am. He knows who I am. I know who Andrew is.
Pirate Tomsky has links here if you want to check out Anthony's music. He's got a link to the YouTube channel and the website. Thanks, Pirate. And then Pirate wants to know, did you watch the Deadwood movie?
Yes.
We did watch it, and not enough. We wanted to
keep going.
Yeah, and
we're secretly both still very upset with you, Pirate, about getting us hooked on that. I'm just
kidding.
You
guys hooked on a great show, and then it ended. So I think I may have already mentioned this in the podcast once. I don't remember, or maybe I just told a friend, and I get confused about what I've talked about on air or not. But we love the show so much, and it's so weird how on Deadwood you start to really like the bad guy, Al Swearingen, and because you start off hating him.
I know where you're going with this.
Well, so when we were in Europe one night, we were getting ready for bed and we were laying down. We were just about to go to sleep, and then you can tell this part if you want.
I
Okay.
just go.
Okay. And so that no, it had been on my mind, and so we were laying there. I was like, "Can I ask you a question?" And he said, "Yes." And then I was like, "Do you know the actor who plays Swearingen?" And he just started laughing because I had some question about
Well, because
some
you had the
other.
tone of like you were gonna. I didn't know what you were gonna ask me. I thought you were gonna ask me something really serious about our marriage or something we really needed to work on. And I was like, yeah, you can ask me whatever you want to ask me. So now what we do is we try. It's getting harder and harder to set each other up because we can both see that question come. We can both. So what happens is we'll set it up like we're gonna ask a really serious question. So I'll just be like this, that, and the other, and then like, so I don't really want to make a big deal out of this, but I just want to ask you something. Can I ask you something? Carrie's like, yeah. You know the actor that played Al Swearingen? And it's just getting funnier and funnier as because we have to leave more time between that when we play that joke on each other. It's just
Right. Well, at
yeah.
first it was funny because it just became a joke of when it wasn't a serious question. It was just the joke was making the other person think that you were asking about to ask something serious. But now it's become a joke, even like if we do have a disagreement and we do need to talk about something serious, we'll still joke about it. We'll say, "So I think we should talk about Al Swearingen." And you'll get a laugh in there, and then you
And then
can
you'll
have
be
the
like, and
serious
then you'll say,
conversation.
no, I really do need to ask you. I'm like, no, you don't. I really do need to ask you.
I
All right,
really do need to ask
we're getting into the weeds about our
Okay.
inside jokes. And
Our inside jokes, but all of this developed because of Pirate Tomsky, who told us we had to
thanks,
watch Joe
Pirate.
Deadwood. Thank you, Pirate.
Yeah, welcome, Keri.
Um, okay. What? Don't go to bed angry. Yeah, that's a great.
So it will be a boy crying wolf thing.
Mhm.
That's what somebody Cheeky Mary said.
So thanks for talking a little bit about sobriety and about
Mhm.
personal stuff like that with me. I know you've been very open about it. And what's the name of the podcast where you did a really long form interview about
Oh,
getting?
it was called. That's a good question. I actually just recently put it up on my site. Just in the about. It's I see it now. It's called Recovery in Real Life. I can put the little link there if y'all want to hear it.
Yeah, drop it in the chat. I think it's a great episode, and I'll go back and edit the description for this video for anybody who might be struggling with anything. If you want to hear Anthony's interview, it's called Recovery in Real Life, and it's your whole story of coming out of drinking.
Mm-hmm.
So
I put it in the thing.
so today's your birthday. There's so many things we could talk about. Is there anything you want to discuss before we go make Italian food? And
not really. I mean, I can't really think of anything off the top of my head. I mean, I guess I don't know. I don't really have anything else to say.
what's
Off
Napoleon
the
up
top
to?
of my head, what's Napoleon up to? Yeah, I've been reading. That giant. It's like a 600-page biography of Napoleon, because there's a new movie coming out next month with Joaquin Phoenix playing Napoleon, and I really want to go see that. So I've been trying to prep for it for the past 6 months, reading that giant book that I dragged around Europe, and I've only gotten 100 pages in because I'm reading 6 other books at the same time. So it's like I read 2 pages a day out of every single book. It's the stupidest strategy finishing anything.
But you spend a lot of time contemplating it. That's why I love you're also reading meditations.
Yeah, meditations. Yeah, Marcus Aurelius. I've been reading that too, very slowly. Guess I could share a very insightful quote that I read yesterday from that book. It was wonderful. It's a really good, very appropriate birthday meditation. He says, I'm going to paraphrase, but he says, human life is trivial. One day we're a blob of semen. The next day we're embalming fluid and we're decaying.
He said that?
Yes, it's in the book. That's in meditations. That's one of his meditations. He's talking about just why do we worry about wealth? Why do we worry about these things? You see people scurrying around from place to place worrying about money and praise and flattery and all these things. But you realize that 2 days, if someone were to walk up to you right now and tell you were going to die today or tomorrow, there's not really much of a difference, and you would probably be panicking. And then when you realize that the difference between today and tomorrow and 30 years from now is equally the same amount of time in the scheme of eternity, live your life like you're going to die tomorrow. It's the whole stoicism thing. And it was just I was laughing when I read that quote I just said to you, because I was like, man, that is just, sometimes he just gets so crude. But he's making a point. He's making a bigger point that just our life is trivial. We could all die at any moment. Our lives mean nothing, but they mean everything.
I was thinking about this recently because you and I are reaching that age where, we've had more conversations about people that we know who are passing away, or people in the news. Yes, Andrew Joyner, I see your comment about Matthew Perry. We did mention at the beginning, before we started talking about addiction, about Matthew Perry passing away. It's unfortunate that sometimes it takes a health scare or someone close to you dying to remind you of how short life is, and what those important things are, and distilling it down to, wait a minute, what are my priorities and what should my priorities be? And I think that's what stoicism is, in a way, is it kind of helps you remember that life is short.
But I also want to make sure that I reiterate that book has a lot of really great wisdom. And one of the quotes I really love from that book is, he says, so you didn't become the greatest scientist. So you didn't become the greatest mathematician or the greatest athlete, but you can still achieve greatness by these three things. And I'm going to forget the three things, but one of them is like telling the truth and serving others. It's like, you can always do that.
Yes.
And that's what he said. You can, like, you might not have achieved this greatness, but you can achieve that greatness every day of your life. And I think that's kind of like the theme of the meditations. And that's one of those books that you got me for New Year's Day last year. And I'm probably halfway through it, but it's one of those where you just kind of are underlining every sentence and thinking about it. And I try to read a little bit of that one every day,
You're very thoughtful about it. I like the way you read that book. Yeah. You read a couple pages, you underline things, you're talking about it with me, and it's, I admire the way you read.
The other book I wasn't tell, because Adam Worrell said he's a huge Beatles fan. I'm reading that book right now about the drummer Jimmy Nicol. And Jimmy Nicol, I've already told you about it, Keri, but maybe others don't know. The first world tour that the Beatles went on, they went to Australia. Ringo Starr got sick, and so he was out for 10 days. And it was there was way too much money on the line, and canceling the tour was not an option. That was not going to happen. They had to get a fill-in drummer. So they looked high and low, and they ended up finding this session drummer in London who just so happened to be Ringo's size. He was the same suit, so he wore his suits and his boots. He knew all the Beatles songs. He kind of looked like the Beatles. He already had the mop top haircut and everything like that. So they got him, and they took him to Australia, and he toured with them for 10 days, and he was a Beatle for 10 days.
Just for 10 days.
Yeah, just for 10 days. And then I'm getting to the part now where he is kind of coming off of it, and he gets flown back to London. It's such a sad, he was really kind of, they were all so close. And then towards the end, it was just like, they just kind of discarded him, and he was gone. And then he was so kind of deluded he was so delusional from the experience that he thought he could put his own project together and be as great as the Beatles. So that's what his next goal was, is coming back into reality, into London, into the scene. He wasn't a session drummer anymore. He went try to go out on his own. But anyways, I'm reading that book now. And the interesting thing is that I just looked at the title page the other day, and I bought it off of Amazon, and it's autographed by Jimmy Nicol. And it was dedicated to someone. It's dedicated to somebody named Chris. I guess Chris didn't want Jimmy Nicol's autograph. It says, to Chris, have a good one, 2014, Jimmy Nicol. And I was like, whoa. So I have an autographed copy of the Jimmy Nicol book. But also a real. That's one of those books I read just because I don't want to have to think about anything. It's like just to kind of relax and just. I kind of read about the Beatles all the time because I really like their career and like them. They're one of my favorite bands. They're probably my favorite band. Anyways, that's it.
They are your favorite band.
Yeah.
I know because I know which bands and musicians you talk about. And I think that one I'd say is your favorite one. I just wanted to say I'm sorry to Darkwater, whose stepfather died yesterday. And if you say a prayer for Darkwater. Yeah, and I'm really sorry. Thank you for sharing that with us and being here with us. And it says he was a musician too. I've got another here. This is a lighthearted one for you, honey. It says, Anthony, we require a full update on the terroristic rodent.
Well, I don't know. Okay, there's a little ray of hope. So I personally we've had a raccoon. We had a raccoon in between our first floor ceiling and our second floor rafters.
In the walls.
In the walls and in between the floors. So we've kind of we've had a little battle trying to get him out. And I personally believe he's not here. And I've sealed off Why are you making that face?
Well, you haven't been here the past 3 days. Look, I don't know if it's the same raccoon because you did seal off the entry points. I think there might be another entry point because I definitely heard some creature of the wild in the walls while you were gone. Tiger and I heard it. So
well, I'm going to believe that it's not the raccoon. I think it's a different, much smaller creature because when I was coming home the other night, last Thursday, I was right just outside of town. I was coming on the turn into town, and a raccoon crossed my path, and I ran it over. I hit it.
What?
And then when I was heading out of town the next day in the daylight, no, I didn't hit it on purpose. It was cross. I tried to avoid it actually. And then when I was leaving town, I saw a dead raccoon on the side of the road, and I was like, "That's the one." Got him. Got him.
This raccoon is very intelligent and very determined because if you are new here, you don't know the story. When we were in Europe for Anthony's tour, we came back and had not been here for weeks. And the raccoon, those 2 holes outside, this old house we're renovating, the 2 holes outside the entry points had already been sealed up for a while, like since the last time we evicted him, for months and months. And he basically pried them open as if with a crowbar. And then there were pecan shells all over our piano room, our music room. And
it sucked. I was just
Anthony was so mad. And then I have this live trap that I was baiting, and I caught 2 neighborhood cats, but I still haven't caught him. He's a sneaky. Oh, and I can't remember if I told the chat. He reached in there and took the little plastic container that had peanut butter in it. He took it out, did not get caught did not trigger the trap, took the peanut butter thing and left. And then I found the empty peanut butter thing on the other side of the house the next day. Like he's that smart that he can go in there.
We got the Rhodes Scholar raccoon.
Yes.
We needed the special needs. We need some special needs raccoons in our neighborhood. We got the Rhodes Scholar, Pulitzer Prize winning author.
Yeah,
3 times nominated.
He's pretty intelligent. I have another question for you. Do you remember this? Remember when I was telling you there was a tweet that was going viral that was kind of funny?
Yeah.
Of this woman.
Yeah, this has been a thing lately, hasn't it?
Yeah. So this started. I saw this tweet. Maybe many other people did. This woman was talking about how often her husband thinks about the Roman Empire, and then it became a thing where people were sort of asking their husbands, "How often do you think about the Roman Empire?" and finding out that their husbands think about the Roman Empire quite a bit, and it became such a viral thing that there were articles written about it, and so Here's one from Fortune magazine. It says the headline is "Men Can't Stop Thinking About the Roman Empire. It's because of masculinity polycrisis." What? And then it's this whole article pontificating about the reasons why men think about the Roman Empire. I asked you, can you just share with the audience, how often do you think about the Roman
I don't
Empire?
even know why I thought this was a joke article. I don't even know. That was the. Why should I even think anything like this is a joke anymore? Well, I don't know. I probably think about the Roman Empire every day.
Every day? You do?
I don't know. It's a cool time. I mean, I was just watching some documentaries about it. You know, when I'm driving, I always put a documentary on and just about something. And yeah, just pretty talk about it. Or I mean, it all relates to the modern world. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
the aqueducts and the togas
And the fall of
and
an empire.
and the Visigoths and the Vandals.
Therese says, I walked past my husband and glanced at his phone, and it actually was about the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just wanted to end with that funny one. Okay. Any final words before we go celebrate your birthday?
I guess no, I don't have anything. Just go follow me online. I mean, this is, you know, thanks to everybody for watching Keri's show. Thanks to everybody for listening to my music and for being part of this community. And it's a wonderful community that is here. And, you know, Keri is doing wonderful things and is just a very special and unique driving force in the community and in what is happening in, I guess, the alternative media world, or the world that is trying to just call out the mainstream side of things. And if you haven't met Keri in person, she is the same person. She's the person that you would think that she is in person. She is the kindest, sweetest, funniest, down to earth person. So if y'all get to meet her, she's married.
I love you. I love you, babe. I'm sorry this didn't turn all mushy. I mean, I'm glad this didn't turn all mushy, but you're almost going to make it mushy at the end. I love you. Happy birthday.
I love you too.
You are the greatest blessing that God's given me in my life. And
Stop.
and I just wanted to know, you know, the actor Al Swearingen? Okay.
Thank you, Keri.
Thank you. Thanks for hanging out with us for this silly show, guys. Thanks for wishing my husband happy birthday and making him feel so welcome. Go check out his music if you haven't had a chance to do so.
I'd like to give a shout out to the Roman Empire.
Shout out to the Roman Empire. Please tune in this Wednesday night. We're going to do another live pop culture. That's our regular night for pop culture. And on Friday, as I mentioned, is going to be a one I'm really excited about. It's an interview with some parents in the GCISD school district. So I hope everyone tunes in for that one. And have a great Halloween tomorrow, guys.
Bye.
I think that's it.
Oh,
bye.
I'm paying property tax tomorrow on Halloween. It's going to be a scary day.
Woo-hoo, scary. Bye, guys.
Bye.